Hi everyone, my name is Elisa and I am a portfolio manager here at the Accelerator's Scale-up Enablement team. And today with my colleague Nico, we're going to be sharing a bit about how we enable scale at WFP. So first, who are we and why are we here today? So Nico and I both work in a very specific work stream here called SDG acceleration. And essentially what we do here is we source, support, and scale high impact innovations that have the potential to help WFP do its work better, to serve our communities and to achieve our mandate of zero hunger. And our team is like a little bit unique in that we identify solutions that are both internal and external to WFP that address a very clear problem statement or need that WFP has at the local, regional, or even the global level. So that's the context for our conversation around scaling today. And we'll be sharing a little bit more about our programs, some best practices on how you can scale with WFP or even other UN agencies, and some of the offerings that we provide to our startups and the businesses that we engage. So just a little bit about how this works. We first start our process here with sourcing innovations based on a problem statement, as I mentioned, that WFP has, and matchmaking a solution for that problem. And from here, we select some of the most promising solutions to participate in a boot camp. These are 5-day workshops to really test that solution for a WFP context. And many of you might have participated in something similar. And towards the end of the spectrum here, we have scale-up enablement. We work with solutions that have demonstrated impact already and have a fit with the WFP context, and also have the potential to scale across WFP offices globally. And lastly, we have an offering called WFP Bridge, which I'll get into a little bit more later. So Nico will tell you a little bit more about the first part of this path, and I'll talk about how we enable scale through the latter half. This is just what I discussed. Okay, so next, why do we care about scale? WFP is the world's largest humanitarian agency. We work in over 120 countries and territories around the world, so our needs are very vast. And here at the WFP Accelerator, we kind of serve as this central access point between WFP country and regional offices all around the world to try and incubate and test and scale innovation. So for internal solutions within WFP, this could be something that maybe could have worked really well in a country office that has the potential to solve a very similar problem set in another country. So we can like really serve as that link and match make some of those solutions with the problems that exist elsewhere. And for external innovations, outside of WFP, I mean, we know that technology and innovation exists outside of WFP as well. Technology is evolving very quickly, and there are just a lot of hyper-localized solutions out there in the market. And we know we can't do things in a silo, so it's extremely important here that we try to see how we can partner with external companies and marry some of these like external solutions from the private sector with our problem statements at WFP and test it in our context. And from the private sector side, innovators like yourselves who are interested not just in the bottom line, but also like having more impact at scale, you also benefit from being able to amplify your impact and reach through our global network and presence. So here we really serve as like the testing ground for businesses like yourselves to be matched and scaled with WFP. And this is why we're excited to talk to you today, because we're always looking for new ideas, new solutions that could be a good fit. So if any of this sounds a little bit exciting to you, like keep your ears open for the rest of the presentation. But just before we move into how this works, we just want to talk about what do we really mean by scale. There are so many definitions of scale, but we don't necessarily just believe that scale means reaching more users. This can also mean deepening the impact that we have to existing users, or improving the functionality of a solution to really stretch its impact and efficiency. So 3 ways that we look at scale are scaling out, scaling functionally, and scaling deep. So what does this look like in practice? Scaling out, expanding impact through replication and adoption in larger geographies. So one example of how we did this was with an optimization tool called Optimus. It started as a solution in our Iraq country office, and later we scaled it to 44 countries, reached over 7 million beneficiaries, and 50 million in efficiency for WFP. Scaling functionally, this is expanding or adapting the functional scope of an innovation for bigger impact. And here, an example is Nihilus, which is a technology solution that we work with. They expanded their model and added features to address the needs of WFP. They're an external solution to include features like a digital wallet, an order management platform, and just a bit more customization for WFP's communities and schools and for our farmers as well. And lastly, scaling deep. So this is not just about reaching more users, but really having a deeper impact at the individual household and community level. So we're not just looking at the number of downloads on an app or the number of people trained, but really how is it affecting and changing people's lives? And one example that and where we're doing this in our portfolio is a project called Solar for Resilience in India. And here we're not just empowering women to have access and training to operate these like solar drying equipment, but we're also building them up, lifting them up to earn an income and also be recognized as decision makers in their households, and also for some women, authority figures in the communities. So these are just a couple of ways that I wanted to frame the conversation on how we scale. And with that, I'm going to pass the next part of the presentation on to my colleague, Nico, who can share more about how we began the journey of scale. So Nico, over to you.
Yeah, hi Elisa. Hi everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about our team and what we do in terms of helping teams to get ready for scaling. So Elisa, if you don't mind, you can move to the next slide, please. Yes, so good to see some faces, some familiar faces here on the call. And for those that are meeting for the first time, I'm happy to meet you all. As I was saying, our team, on the previous slides that Elisa was sharing with you, we take the first stage, like helping teams to be ready for scaling. So our mission is basically to go out there, source ventures which are aligned with WFP's mission of ending hunger, see how we can support them in getting them ready to scaling. So Elisa, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Yep. So we do it through a dedicated program called the Sprint program. So this is a program which usually lasts about 6 months, give or take, depending on the nature of the project. Sometimes can last a bit longer, but in general, it's 6 months where we work with the selected ventures. By cohorts, we take up to 10 ventures that we support by providing them with financial support, project management in the team, but also connecting them with our country offices. In terms of financial support, teams get grants of up to $100,000 to go and implement their innovations with us. And this program is really dedicated to those ventures which are a bit early in their innovation journey, to make sure that they're ready to scale and help us address this big challenge of hunger that we want to address around the world. So how do we do that? We split the program in 3 phases. We have the sprint scoping. So basically, actually before the sprint, I should have mentioned this, we do run a program called the bootcamp, where we work with teams and country offices and colleagues from business units at the headquarters, mentors who come and help us really understand the problem that the venture is addressing in a WFP context, understands the needs of the venture, and help them work on a use case that they would implement with WFP. So after the bootcamp, when they join the sprint program, we would know what are the deliverables, what are the indicators that will be used to measure the success of the venture in a WFP context. And then for the implementation itself, which takes about 6 months, as I just explained, that's the moment of truth for these ventures. So can we go and implement what we're discussing in the bootcamp with all the inputs that we have collected from different experts? And then we close the sprint by assessing what has been achieved versus the goal we set up at the beginning of the program. So if you go to the next step, I will show you the approach that we usually take. Thanks, Elisa. So we are big believers in lean methodology. So we design our programs in a way that allows for flexibility to the teams. Failing, it's totally fine. There is no mistake with that. We understand it. It's part of innovation. So we really try to test different things very quickly, gather learnings, change, go back, test again until we find the right way to make innovations work in our environment. So where do we start? You can see with the three circles that we have, we're trying to hit the intersection where all the three circles meet. As I was saying, that we're big believers in lean methodology. Same for human-centered design. We want to have solutions which are really addressing existing problems for the communities that WFP is serving. So we start by validating the desirability of the innovations that we are implementing, because we know that if a solution is not really needed by those affected by hunger, then there is no way this is going to be successful. Once we have validated the desirability, then we will move on the feasibility. Can you actually do what you want, what is claimed to be done by the innovation? And then finally, we will look into the business model. How is that solution financially viable? So once we validate all the hypotheses that we have around those three big topics, that's when we confidently say this solution is ready to scale. Then we'll hand them over to Elisa's team to go and scale. So Elisa, maybe we can move to the next slide. Yes, thank you. Just to share a few challenges we have noticed experienced by teams in our portfolio when it comes to getting ready to scale. There are many, but here I was basing on the top three that we have seen from different ventures we've had in the portfolio. As Elisa was sharing, we've had more than 200 ventures now in our portfolio for the existence of the accelerator. So this is actually out of a big database of ventures that we have supported. One of the challenges faced by many ventures is having a weak business model. As I was saying, this is usually tested towards the end of the sprint phase. Why? Because we want to make sure that the solution is desired, is feasible. But then when it comes to the business model, it tends to be a challenge quite often for different reasons. One being that WFP, the business we're in, we're not working with the most affluent customers, so that is always a challenge. How do you make sure that you find the right business model for your innovation? So it's a challenge that we understand, but it's critical, because if until you crack this one, there is no way that innovations will be sustainable. A second topic is team and capacity gaps. We have seen this, especially in relation to scaling. How are you keeping up with your goals in terms of scaling, especially when it comes to scaling across geographies? We have had many innovations. When you want to move into a new geography, it's always a big challenge, not only in terms of capacity, but actually even understanding the context and everything. But really, that local presence, it's also one of the key challenges faced by many teams in the portfolio. And finally, on the list of challenges I wanted to share here is the grand survival mode and strategic growth. Another big one that we have noticed, again, the nature of startups many of us, as we know, is most of the teams are always bootstrapped. So you're always chasing opportunities, which makes total sense. But the problem when you want to grow, you need to find the right balance. We have seen many examples where teams tried to scale too early, or went outside of their strategic goals of growth that they had set up because they found some opportunities. And that has affected the teams when it comes to successfully scaling. So again, another big one, to not be distracted by some opportunities which might not be necessarily aligned with your strategic growth. What we have seen for teams that have really managed to scale successfully, they avoided like these three points I just raised here. And I have a use case that I wanted to take you through to show you how they avoided some of the challenges I just shared here. Thanks, Elisa. So this is a venture called Sanku. What Sanku is basically doing is to fight malnutrition, focusing on East Africa, where fortified food is not really there's no common practice for food manufacturers to fortify food, and the prevalence of malnutrition is quite high. The way Sanko does this is by working with the millers, um, giving them nutrients for free, but selling to them packaging, mostly bags, and that helping them to offset the cost of buying the nutrients that they give to the millers. They joined our program in 2019, the bootcamp in May. Yeah, time flies. That didn't realize it's been such a long time ago, but they joined in May 2019 in the bootcamp. Then they were selected to join the sprint program, which I just explained to you in October 2019, working with us and the WFP Tanzania country office on a pilot. By the end of 2020, the team was already growing. They were serving more than 270 meters in Tanzania, reaching more than 2 million people on a daily basis. Then, as the team was growing, we recommended them to join the Scale-up program that Elisa will be talking about very shortly. And by the end of 2021, they had more than doubled the number of meters they work with, reaching more than 3 million people. So as you can see, at that scale, the team was still working only in Tanzania. I bet they could have found so many opportunities that they could have applied to and go to other countries, but they stayed focused, saying, let's first address the Tanzanian market before we can try to scale somewhere else. They did that in 2022, where they moved to Kenya. By that time, by the end of the year, they reached 800 meters. In terms of the number of people reached, that number had grown already to 4.5 million people. So you can see the growth was really steady by the team. In 2023, as the team kept growing, they installed their first facility in Tanzania to produce the nutrients, which gave them more control on their supply chains. Before, they were importing many of the nutrients that they were using, giving to the millers. Then they continued their growth in Kenya and Tanzania. That was a big milestone for them as they served more than 1,000 meters for the first time and reaching 7 million people. In 2024, the team has scaled to Ethiopia. Again, you can see they're really methodic when it comes to scaling. So the markets in Kenya has grown. They're financially sustainable. It was the time to scale to a third new country, which in this case is Ethiopia last year, serving more than 1,400 meters in the three countries and reaching 9.4 million people. This year, the year has not ended yet, but I know they've reached more than 20 million people already in 2025. as the team continued growing. So in a nutshell, I would say it's good to define a strategy when it comes to scaling. Really avoid those distractions that may come, especially those opportunistic funding that we have seen sometimes distracting teams. Make sure you have the right team to help you scale, especially if you want to go into a new geography. Make sure you're going to have local presence in those areas. And as I was sharing at the beginning of the talk, remember that at the center of everything we're doing is the users, the customers. Make sure you're addressing an existing need. Second, obviously, make it work. Make sure you have feasible innovation. And finally, work on your business model because it's going to be very critical when it comes to scaling. So I'm stopping here, handing it over to Elisa. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Nico, for that overview. It's me again. And I just want to, okay, perfect. So I will share a little bit more about kind of what happens after the sprint program through our Scale-up Enablement program. And I will just come back to this slide right here just to show you, remind you again, like where we sit, or where the program sits in this kind of broader continuum. And if you kind of look at this, this pathway here, compared to the volume of innovations and the programs that we implement, we're very selective with the type of projects that we onboard. We have 7 current active portfolio projects and about 16 alumni projects, because we really want to focus our attention on those with real potential to scale across WFP and have a really good fit. So here is our current portfolio of innovations, just to give you a flavor of what kind of projects we work with. So we have nutrition, small food systems for smaller farmers, supply chain, cash-based transfers, and sustainable resilience. And I oversee our resilience and smallholder farmer portfolio. So how do we enable scale here? Before I get into this, I just want to caveat and also remind you all by kind of sharing that this is a bit different from commercial pathways to scale, because here we're talking about scaling with WFP, right? So there are different unique challenges that we face, like, buy-in from our country offices or navigating this very kind of often bureaucratic WFP or UN system, which can be very challenging. So, that's why we need a bit more of a tailored bespoke pathway to scale for our projects. And that's where kind of our team and our background and expertise bring value here. So how do we do this? The first thing we're looking for is ensuring that there is a match with a demand and solution, which we've been talking about before, and Nico has addressed too. And you might have already done this with your users. At WFP, we want to make sure that there is a good match for a WFP problem statement with a country office or a regional office. So this can be done through the boot camps, or it can be done also through sourcing and matchmaking that we do at our program. And then we have a tailored scale-up enablement program that is between 12 to 18 months. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a second and what we offer. Second, we want to see that there are certain like ingredients that we feel like are going to be successful for scale at WFP, just based on our experience. And Nico alluded to a few of these as well. But some of these things are obvious, like having the right data and user research. But some maybe aren't super obvious. Nico alluded to this as well, like teaming and enthusiasm. So sometimes when we conduct our due diligence and speak with companies for these interviews, we find that there are conflicts between like co-founders, or there are very differing versions of or visions of scale. And so we really want to understand, what is the vision for scale? Do you have enthusiasm to scale with WFP? Does this make sense for your business, and is there a good fit between like the startups and WFP needs? And so a lot of this is validated during the sprint process, of course, but this is something that may not be as obvious, and things that we look for to ensure that the preconditions are there. And once we know that those things are there, here's a criteria we use for entry into our program. Again, one of the key things to note here, excuse me, is stakeholder buy-in from WFP. If buy-in is not there, then we know that it's going to be very, very, very tricky to scale. So, the relationship and excitement needs to be mutual from the venture side and the WFP side. And we really need a strong institutional advocate on the inside to really help, champion this. We also want to work with, of course, innovations that have demonstrated their impact. And here we look at least 100,000 users reached or 1 million in efficiencies for WFP as the criteria. So once a venture or an innovation has been selected, we want to ensure that we have the right pathway to scale with WFP. Nico also kind of mentioned this. So we try to hold and organize what we call a path to scale workshop, where we try to create some specific work plans in collaboration, of course, with the WFP sponsor office to ensure that we're aligned on outcomes and there is a specific implementation plan and goals that make sense for this partnership. And here's just an example of a path to scale workshop we did with one of our projects, PlugPay. We conducted stock taking exercises and brainstormed really heavily on shared goals and ways that we wanted to scale and create more impact, and identified some concrete and practical pathways to scale within WFP. Excuse me. So to enable scale, what do we do from there? We first focus on the path to scale workshop. So this includes a strategy and implementation plan leading to a very specific outcome and goal. So this could be, for instance, scaling with WFP in 6 countries and reaching 500,000 people in 18 months. Next, we want to ensure that there is sufficient resources and capacity both on the venture side and the WFP side to implement that plan. So this can mean things like human resources, mentorship, or even funding. Then we unlock new partnerships on the ground and also at a global stage, and ensure that there's a lot of visibility and excitement for the partnership to support with the implementation, but also fundraising as well to continue to support the scale journey. And lastly, we develop custom metrics which focus on impact and, in addition to other KPIs, and create a monitoring plan to track those results and gather some further evidence. So those are just kind of some of the key offerings that we provide, but this is the kind of full menu of services that we provide in that 12 to 18 months between project management, access to WFP's network, fundraising and partnerships, mentorship, communication and marketing, and graduation options within WFP. And I'll share all of this with Kata, so you have all of the details after this session. So ways that we enable scale beyond the Scale-up Enablement program. For projects that graduate from our programs at the accelerator, and specifically for external projects and private sector companies, we also realize that it's really important to ensure that the impact that you've created with WFP is sustainable and that you have the resources and the support to continue delivering and building on that impact even after our engagement ends. So here are just a few things we offer at the accelerator to support this. So first is the alumni services. This is why you're all here today. The community is really vibrant, and it's really important for us to stay connected to, share updates, to hear about what's going on with your venture, and to also share opportunities on our side to re-engage some of the ventures that we've worked with in the past, and also, of course, to exchange learnings. And yeah, big shout out to Kata here for cultivating such an amazing program and community, which you guys are all a part of. Second, we know that funding is really difficult to access, especially these days, and applying to acceleration programs is maybe sometimes the easiest way to access non-dilutive funding and grants, but that's not always the recipe for scale, as Nico mentioned, especially for private companies. You can only run off of small grants for so long, so ultimately you need other types of capital and financing and investments to really scale your solution and scale your business. So we offer different types of financing support to help you continue expanding the impact that you've built with WFP. And the first is investment readiness. And here we offer things like support with financial modeling, developing impact frameworks, and optimizing your legal structures to really help you get ready for investments and pitching to investors. Second is WFP Innovation Bridge. This is our catalytic funding facility that we where we offer concessional loans and guarantees with a range of 250K to 2 million for WFP mission relevant businesses. And World Food Invest, this is a program that we're actually launching next year, but it's WFP's investment fund that will directly invest in businesses across the food value chain. And then the ticket sizes run between 500K and 10 million per ticket, focusing on companies in Africa and post-conflict recovery countries. And again, I'll share all of the details with Kata after this so that you can have a bit more information. But these are just a couple of ways that we continue to scale and support innovations, after the 12 to 18-month program that we offer at Scale-up. Okay, so now I just want to wrap up by sharing the story of one of our portfolio projects at the Scale-up Enablement team, Nihilus, and their journey to scale. So Nihilus is a tech company that allows for communities in food deserts to procure food directly from farmers and producers at a much lower cost. So kind of think of Amazon for group buying for remote communities to access a fresh food where it would otherwise be very expensive and difficult for suppliers to transport to. So there's a lot of content here, but let me just summarize. So here's the journey of Nihilus at the accelerator. So in June of 2022, our WFP Peru country office needed a solution to digitize and improve last mile distribution to our social kitchens. And at the Scale-up Enablement team, we identified Nihilus as a potential solution. And onboarded them. We conducted an evaluation, due diligence, and we onboarded them to the Scale-up Enablement program by October of 2022. And from the Path to Scale workshop that we facilitated, we identified how we can adapt the Nihilus tech solution for WFP. And so there was a team that was trained and deployed to Peru. And from January 2023, a solution for WFP, a Nihilus solution for WFP was launched. And it was scaled from 2 community kitchens to almost 100 locations. And it was serving 14,000 people per month. So it was really catching traction. And moving on to January 2024, we've received a similar request from our Colombia country office. And the field team here needed a digital marketplace to connect social kitchens with retailers. So here Nihilus was used again to address this need. And then after this, a third request came from our WFP Ecuador country office that needed a solution for a digital marketplace to connect farmer associations with schools. So then again, they adapted their solution to increase features and further customize their solution for WFP. And all of this was really exciting. Within 1 year of implementation in Ecuador, the solution scaled and became a national program. And it's now offering food access to 40,000 children. And so, with the partnership between Nihilus and WFP, we scaled to 4 countries and in Latin America, and there's another on the way in the Dominican Republic. Nihilus was also the first to receive the bridge funding that we just discussed. They were scaling really quickly across Latin America. The needs were huge, and they needed additional funding, so they were approved as a first case for the bridge fund, which is a huge success for us. And now, we're at the stage where we're designing a regional solution for Nihilus with WFP in Latin America. And we've also initiated the process to formalize Nihilus as an official IT solution for WFP, which is also for a organization like WFP, that's a huge feat. And so this is an example of a very successful partnership with WFP and an external company. And one key ingredient here that I want to mention is that the founder of Nihilus, really saw the vision, was super excited to work with WFP, And once we started partnering and creating impact, there was this huge wave of interest and excitement and visibility all around that, and what snowballed into, what it is today. So yeah, that's the story of Nihilus. I hope it inspires you on how, we can partner together to really create impact at scale. It takes a good solution and a good match with WFP and commitment and willingness on both sides to make it all happen. So yeah, these are just a couple ways that, WFP is supporting projects to scale. We're always looking to learn about new projects, and that could potentially be a good fit for our programs and for WFP. So if you're interested in learning more, or see a good fit with our programs, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you so much for joining today, and I hope this was helpful. Happy to take any questions.
Amazing, Elisa. Thanks so much for that. While I give some time for people to put any questions in case they want to, there was one question for Nico, and I'll sort of hop into that first, and then we can take it from there. Nico, there was a question from Pratap about Sanku, saying, would you be able to share if and when Sanku reached financial sustainability, having profitability without grants? I don't know if that's something that you can share, or if, yeah, that was something that
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, thanks, Kata. So they broke even in 2023, but with the growth path they've been on since then, I'm assuming they've probably taken on more loans because they moved into a new country, Ethiopia, as I was saying. Also, if I look at the number of people they were reaching in 2023 and today, that has more than tripled from 7 million to 21, as I was saying, as we know, for 2025. So I don't have the information right now. We can double check and see. But at least they broke even in 2023. That's the latest information I have in terms of financial profitability on their side.
awesome. Thanks, Nico.
Liz, I don't know if you have any most recent information to share because they were also in the Scale-up Enablement.
No, actually, the expert of Senku just left the call, so we could have had maybe an update on that. But yeah, we're actually just waiting for some of the updates for the last quarter. So I think this could be something we get back to you on that. But of course, we also want to make sure that we share information that's also publicly available, so we can double check on some of the specifics and get back to you.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks you both. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I guess my question to loop into like a call to action is if any of the topics that either Elisa or Nico mentioned around scaling, or if there's anything that sounds of particular interest to any of the people here in the call, is there any way that they can reach out? Is there any call for applications upcoming that people might be it would be good to keep in mind? Yeah, just as a brief call to action to leave folks with.
And just a quick one too. I think what I'm curious about is also the kind of hoping to also just have a conversation. I'm also curious to understand, just from, I think the folks on the call today are mostly external businesses, and just so what we always want to also fine tune our programs and our offerings to really not just serve the needs of WFP, but try to enable more partnerships. So I'd also love to just hear from you in terms of your needs, and do you see a fit? What are some of the kind of what's holding you back maybe from since you've graduated from the programs in maybe scaling with WFP, or what are some of the barriers that you have, whether they're actual or not, that we can kind of destigmatize and maybe just have a conversation about. And I think I would love to also hear from the ventures themselves but also, yeah, just have a conversation. Thanks.
Hi, Kata, can I jump in?
Of course, come on in. Hi, Paolo.
Hi, Peter here from Urban Greens. We're still, we're still part of the AICR program, and like my question is more around financing post grant. So we've been able to secure obviously funding through the ACR Sprint program. We had another donor come in to supplement that. And so we've been able to build a structure, an organization that is like, yeah, now building its first sales traction. So we're kind of like well on our way, but we can kind of like see the horizon coming, like where we will have like a built up organization, but funders are not quite like 100% sure about whether they want to fund us. And we're particularly looking for working capital to be able to purchase inventory, so we can grow the organization. But there seems to be a bit of a gap between kind of like, oh, sorry, can you guys hear me? So there seems to be a bit of a gap between what we've now built and like actually investors really jumping on board and providing us with the capital. And so it's great to see that you guys have this facility of the like starting at 250,000 and the bridge facility. But we're kind of like one step before that, right? So we would like tremendously benefit from, let's say, $50,000 worth of working capital. But we're really struggling to find the investors and like particularly the working capital investors to kind of like finance that gap. And it's a bit, I hear that from other startups as well. It's kind of like the post grad drop. So like you have your first like traction. It's really not looking bad, but you do need this capital to survive to kind of like really scale the organization. And it's often like, yeah, once you have like a year and a half, 2 years worth of traction, and even at this point where we are right now, where we have kind of like 8 to 10 months worth of traction. So now we can go to investors, but then, yeah, local banks are extremely risk adverse. So we're based in Uganda, so like unless we have some serious collateral to put up, like it's really a no-go. Unsecured loans are virtually unheard of. And the international, more social impact-oriented investors, like they typically need 6 months, like if they're kind of like really convinced by what you're doing, but more typically 9 to 12 months before they're ready to actually invest like $50,000 to $100,000. So just curious, like, so kind of like against that backdrop, really curious, like what you have seen in the portfolio, how have other companies dealt with this kind of like funding gap? Like, and then kind of like, yeah, maybe any tips or ideas that you have for us.
No, that's a great question and a real problem. Unfortunately, while we can offer better interest loans than the bank, because we are, the UN, sometimes we're not as fast as the banks at the same time. So, one thing that we try to do is create a pipeline, right? We have a prospective pipeline that we're doing advanced due diligence for, so that if, and building an investment case so that I'm speaking specifically for Bridge, and I don't know if Noor is on this call, but he can also provide a bit more information on this. But, we're anticipating, that it is going to take a lot of lead time for us to secure the actual funding for the startups. And so we try to anticipate the scaling needs, 6, 12 months down the line so that we can build a use case and investment case, for much ahead in the future, not just today's needs, right? So that's what we're doing right now with Bridge. There is an active pipeline that we're building. If this sounds interesting to you at all, please feel free to reach out to me and we can have a discussion. It is open to eligible companies that have engaged already with WFP. So, you know, that's why I think it's relevant for folks like you on the call today. And that's exactly what it was intended to do, to, you know, be a bridge between, you know, before you raise maybe your first or second round of investments, you know, having a bit more concessional access to concessional financing and funding from WFP. And this is a partnership, a facility that we've built with UNCDF. So yeah, do reach out if that sounds interesting. And yeah, thanks for the question. But we hear you, and I think it's a big challenge for us at the UN, because we're trying to also take the feedback and also optimize our systems and processes. And Nico and Kata, we know all about this, because we know that if we want to work with private sector, if we want to meet the needs of, you know, the realities of the market and the needs of companies, and we have to move quickly. And we've done a lot of procurement innovation as well. Nihilus was actually one of the first projects that has been, you know, we use this as a use case on how we need to really have better systems that respond to the needs of the private sector. And innovation, really, if we want to partner with innovation, we can't just stick to the status quo of, you know, these kind of bureaucratic systems. We need to move, we need to be able to be a little bit more agile and be more responsive. So yeah, please reach out around Bridge. And Nico, I think you have also something to mention there.
Yeah, no, thanks, Elisa. Just to add very quickly to what you just said, Peter, I wonder on your side if you've also thought of reaching out to some of the VCs working in East Africa. Because again, what I've seen, VCs versus organizations like WFP or development organizations, they tend to have more flexibility or even deeper pockets, because again, for us, these programs, they depend on annual budgets that you have, and then if a project is in the sprint program, there is no guarantee it's going to be there in the next phase, for example. But with VCs, I think if they are happy with the kind of progress that you're making, then they would continue trying to avail funding as needed. And actually, I have an acquaintance, I think they're working in Kenya, and the challenge is always, you see on the side of startups, these issues of funding all the needed funds. But at the same time, if you speak to people who are trying to provide capital, they're also having issues finding the right businesses, right? So how do we make sure that you facilitate that matching? So in this case, if you'll be interested, this funds, I know they have an AI-based solution, which is helping them with due diligence to identify the right ventures and provides them with loans in East Africa. I think they were in Kenya and Rwanda. We need to double check if Uganda is also on the list. I'll be happy to put you in touch with them and see, on top of what Elisa just shared. Thank you.
Oh, that would be fantastic. We have been in touch with many of them. I have been in touch with many of them. I do have a history in impact investing as well, so there are a lot of familiar names that we're in touch with. But no, please, like, do share. I think, like, if you talk about, so what Elisa, you were saying about being a bit more agile and kind of like, it's also not necessary maybe for WFP, right? My question was also not to get funding from WFP per se to bridge the gap, but rather really about like what your experiences are in your portfolio, what you have seen others do, and then maybe also an idea to see how you can leverage your institution, like to work with more agile like organizations like local banks, by, for instance, offering guarantees, right? So this problem that we have of not being able to get loans from local banks, yet they're sitting on kind of like financing for climate smart businesses or climate smart opportunities, but they can't issue the loans unless there is a collateral or a guarantee in place. Right? So WFP coming in, like having worked with businesses for 12 months, like knowing those businesses, being able to then guarantee in place, we might actually be able to unlock some of that capital for businesses like ours. And like I said, we're not talking about like $250,000, right? We're talking about even $20,000-$30,000 to finance inventory from China, like would already get us a huge step forward. So I think maybe there's still opportunities there as well to see kind of like how yeah, you guys could work with yeah, with some of these more agile organizations like the local banks.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter, for the great question, and thanks both Elisa and Nico for the answers. Just because I'm conscious that we're running a bit out of time, I will just ask one final question from Paolo. So also Paolo, feel free to let me know if there's anything else. No, don't be sorry. Peter, was a great question. But Elisa, I think it's for Elisa or maybe for Sue, but also perhaps for Nico. Is there a way in which ventures can engage with the different touch points that you were mentioning before? Are there any open calls or periodic like calls for application? And if they're not selected, if ventures are not selected, do they get maybe any feedback or any way of identifying yeah, just how to detect certain gaps in certain applications. I don't know, Elisa or Nico.
Yeah, just really quickly, I would say this forum, this community is the best way to stay engaged with upcoming opportunities. Also, follow us on LinkedIn. There's a lot that we share in terms of open calls for applications. Nico can maybe speak to the sprint programs, but at least for the scale-up team, if a venture is not selected, we do, provide a thorough, explanation and because, the due diligence process, it takes a very long time for both sides, right? And it's a lot of investment, and we just want to make sure that if it's a no now, it could also open the door for a yes, later down the line, right? So we have a conversation and share some feedback as to why. And a lot of it is just that the criteria isn't met, and that based on our experience, we just want to wait. It could also be issues related to just we're full right now and we don't have the capacity, but we might be open to something in 6 months, right? So I think just always stay in touch. This community is a great way to do that, and just keep an eye out on the newsletters and what we post on LinkedIn. And Peter, some of your concerns are kind of specific, and it's also a huge issue for a lot of startups that we work with. I just quickly wanted to say that I think that's why you don't see, when I showed you the portfolio of innovations, and even across our alumni, we only have 2 external ventures in our current active portfolio. And I think it's like only 2 or 3 in our alumni portfolio. So this is something that we know we have to address, and that's why we have kind of these more private sector support facility that through Bridge, through World Food Invest, through the investment readiness program that we're trying to build up to be more agile and responsive. But yeah, we also have things like local programs that are a little bit more tailored and have those local partnerships on the ground that I think could also address some of the things that you're looking for.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks for that, Elisa. And now, yes, I think we are out of time. And so I will first thank all of you for being here and for the great questions and for the great engagement. Thanks, Elisa and Nico, also for just being here and sharing all this great information. And we really appreciate that. There's a very quick poll in case you want to leave us any feedback in terms of if you found the session interesting or useful, if there's anything we can improve. And also on that note, and also using Elisa's comment as a bit of a segue, we're getting ready to think of how the community is going to look next year, and any particular topics of interest, questions that you would like answered, any speaking opportunities or speakers or specific topics. Now is the moment in which we always want to hear from you, but now is especially relevant because we're getting ready to think of that. So any feedback you have, please feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, always happy to hear what you'd like to see us do next. and what